Hello, welcome to Fabulous Food. Today we're going to be making a tomato and herb tart. So before we do anything else we need to put the oven on. So that's 220 degrees C, or if you've got a fan oven, 200 degrees C. And the next thing we're going to do is to slice our tomatoes. So your recipe book says 6 large tomatoes, but I had 4 come in this punnet, and I think really that will be enough in a punnet that size. So you need to take the stalks out, so just give them a gentle twist and they should come away. Put those into your compost box. So now we're going to cut the tomatoes up. So you can see where the tomato is attached to the vine, that's going to point towards the wall, and I'm going to slice down thin slices. So I'm holding the tomato here with my pincer grip, thin slices like this, and you can see that you get a cross section of the tomato, and that because we're cutting it this way round, the seeds aren't all falling out, which is very important. Don't cut it the other way, which is the way you would normally cut tomatoes up perhaps if you were putting them in a salad, because what will happen is the middles will fall out and you'll just be left with the outside. So do that for each of the tomatoes, keeping your fingers well out of the way of the knife. Moving your fingers back along the tomato as you cut along. If you get to the end and you're a bit worried about cutting that last slice, put the tomato flat, put your fingers at the top like that and just slice across, and then your fingers are well out of the way of the knife. There, so my tomatoes are all sliced, so I'm going to move those out of the way. And the next thing I'm going to do is to get my pastry ready. So I've got a nice flat baking tray. I've got a pack of ready rolled puff pastry. You must make sure that this has been out of the fridge for 20 minutes before you use it, otherwise when you try and unroll it, it will all crack because it's too cold. So take it out of the cellophane like that, and you'll notice that it actually comes on a piece of baking parchment. So if you gently unroll it onto your baking tray, the baking parchment can stay underneath and do the job of lining your baking tray for you. That's my oven beeping to tell me it's come up to the temperature. Now it's beginning to crack at the end there because it's still a little bit cold in the middle, so I'm just going to leave that for 5 minutes to just warm through a bit before I unroll the last little bit. So if that happens to you, just stop, wait for 5 minutes, and then we'll finish unrolling it. So I've left it just for 5 minutes, and the last little bit is unrolled much more easily now, so it's definitely worth being patient with it. You can see that the paper is slightly too long on either side, so I'm just going to trim that off because we don't want that being a hazard in the oven. So we've got our lined baking tray with our puff pastry on it, and the next thing to do is to spread our cream cheese, our Philadelphia cheese, all over the base of our pastry, but we're going to be leaving a 1 centimetre edge all the way round. So when you put your cream cheese onto your pastry, start spreading it out as you go. So you're putting dollops of it all over rather than putting it all in the middle, because then you just have to spread it further. So scrape your box out. I'm just going to get a knife so I can get into the corners and scrape all of the cream cheese out. Now at this stage, if you were in school, Mrs. Halloran would be spreading her cream cheese with the back of a spoon, like this, and I would be spreading the cream cheese with a knife. So it's completely up to you how you prefer to do it, what feels better for you. So I'm going to switch to a knife, as that's my preferred option, and just work gently. It should spread quite well. The pastry's nice and cold. So just keep going until you've got a 1 centimetre border. There. So it looks a bit like you've got a picture frame around the edge. And you notice that my pastry is hanging over the end there. So I could trim them off. I'm not going to be able to put tomato on top of those edges, but I'm actually going to leave them, and then when it's cooked I could trim them off and somebody can eat them so they don't get wasted. So the next job to do is to arrange our tomatoes all over our cream cheese. So get your tomatoes back. You'll have some bottom end pieces like this, but you mustn't waste those. So if you put them skin side down, they'll be fine. So again, I'm going to put that stalk side down, don't want to waste it. And just take some time to put your tomatoes all over the base. You can arrange them beautifully if you want to, or you can just tumble them on and just spread them out so that every portion gets the same amount of tomato. So you will have more than one layer of tomato on your tart, so don't worry about that if they start piling up. These are what are going to give your tart its flavour, so you want plenty all over like that. And just make sure it's even. So the last thing to do before we put this in the oven is to add some seasoning. So I've got my mixed herbs here. Now if you're in school, we've got nice big jars of mixed herbs like this that we'll get you to sprinkle over. You might just have a small jar at home, but it'll have the same kind of herbs in it, so give it a good sprinkle. There aren't many flavours in this tart, so you want to make sure that you're adding all these extra flavours to it. So now I'm going to put lots of black pepper on. Mrs. Halloran loves black pepper, so she would encourage you to put lots and lots on. And the last piece of seasoning is salt, but we're not going to put very much salt on because it's really not very good for us, but it will help draw the moisture out of the tomatoes. So there we have the tomato and herb tart ready to go in the oven. I'm going to put it in my preheated oven for 25 minutes until the tomatoes are cooked and the pastry is lovely and golden brown and crispy. I just want to give you a word of warning that when you open your oven to see if it's cooked in 25 minutes, there will be a lot of steam that's been created by all the moisture coming out of the tomato. So stand back as you open the oven so that it doesn't all go into your face. And mine's just come out of the oven and you can see there's a huge air bubble there, but as it cools down that's going to go down too, and then I can just rearrange my tomatoes a little bit where they've been pushed aside. But you can see it's lovely and golden brown around the edges. The tomatoes are just beginning to crisp on the edges too, and that will be absolutely delicious. There, my air bubble's gone down now, and I've just moved a couple of tomatoes over to cover that patch up. So that's ready for tea now. So please send us some pictures of your own tomato and herb tarts on the Google Classroom. We'd love to see your products, and I hope you really enjoy them. Bye bye.